Good evening, Camby. Welcome to the first meeting of 2022. Today is January 5th, and we are excited to be here and start off a new year. The council did not have anything before tonight, and there's nothing slated for after tonight. So we have a little bit of a lighter agenda for ourselves to start the year off than normal. But Happy New Year to the council, to city staff, and to everyone in Canby that's tuning in. I hope that everyone was safe, has been safe. I know there's some bug going around that's not necessarily COVID related, and it's taken people out. So please stay healthy to start the new year. And I really do wish all of you on the council and everyone in TV land watching tonight to have a really very safe, happy, and blessed new year. I'd like to say that 2022 would be very different than 21 and 20, but it's 5 days in, and we shall see if we can end on a much stronger note than the last couple of years. But I'm excited for what the city has in store for itself in this coming year and in years to come. There's a lot of activity that was started last year and the year before that we're going to see come to fruition this year and in next really quickly subsequent years. So it's a very exciting time for the city of Canby, and looking forward to the year ahead for all of us. So tonight, let me grab out my trusty agenda. Is the I have first up on the agenda as usual is the citizen input and community announcements. This is an opportunity for audience members to address the city council on items not on the agenda. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. Staff and the city council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizen input before the meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. If in the future you're interested in speaking to the council through citizen input or have a community announcement, please email and reach out to our deputy city recorder. She would love to get you on the agenda. Her email address is benhamm@cambyoregon.gov. And just please note that right now the council is meeting virtually, so we'll have you drop in and join us via that. I don't have any. I do have 3 citizen input pieces. Sorry, it's 4. 3 of them have deferred their time to one other person, and it has to do with something in the consent agenda. So when we get to that piece, we'll go to that. I have no other items of public input or community announcements at this time. So I will move into the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda that includes the minutes of the November 3rd, 2021 joint work session with the Planning Commission and regular city council meeting. The appointment of Matt Ellison to the Planning Commission for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2024. The appointment of Dan Ewert to the Planning Commission for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2024. And the appointment of Nick Cousin to the Planning Commission for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2022.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion has been made by Council President Hensley, seconded by Councilor Varway to approve the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the minutes of the November 3rd, 2021 joint work session with the Planning Commission and regular city council meeting, appointment of Matthew Ellison to the Planning Commission for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2024, an appointment of Dan Ewert to the Planning Commission for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2024, an appointment of Nick Cousin to the Planning Commission for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2022. As I said at the beginning, I do have a citizen that would like to address the council regarding the consent agenda. And then if it's okay with the council, I would like that they go first. Okay, perfect. So Carol Palmer is here to speak to us regarding the consent agenda items. And then her time, she has had three other people sell their time to her. Deborah Groschel, Dawn Engel, and Judy Zettergren have sold their time to her. So she has 12 minutes to address the council as she chooses. Carol, good evening.
Am I here? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you for being here this evening. Happy New Year.
Same to you. Thank you for having me. Start my video here. Okay. You should have in front of you some remarks that I put together and forwarded to Melissa and to Maya, and I believe you all have those. So I'm just going to keep this quick and just read what I wrote. And then if you have any questions, I'm certainly available to answer. Today's agenda, of course, the consent agenda includes the appointment of 3 applicants to the Planning Commission, as well as other things, of course. But based on my review of the candidates' applications, I think the selection committee made the wrong decision. We have 4 candidates that applied. Mr. Ewart and Ms. Jarosh described their experiences and skills that directly relate to the work of the Planning Commission. The other 2 applicants, Mr. Cousins and Mr. Ellison, have considerably less planning-related experience and skills. The selection committee has recommended, as you know, the approval of Cousins, Ewart, and Ellison. And I did include in the packet, because it wasn't in the packet you folks have, Judy Jarosh's application. So that should be somewhere in that packet. If you have not had a chance to look at it, you can read the kinds of things that she indicated, that the skills and experience she has that she brings to the Planning Commission. You know, of course, I did not have visibility to the criteria that was used for the selection or the questions that was used. However, I do know that upcoming planning efforts will benefit from strong information analysis, critical thinking, and consensus building skills. Under normal circumstances, and for most boards, adding a person without experience is an opportunity. It's not a problem. But first-time board members bring fresh perspectives, they bring new ideas, they can re-energize a group that's maybe gone a little stale. However, the Planning Commission is not an entry-level board, and does not have a typical workload like most boards do. And the current circumstances of the planning department are far, far from normal. A relatively new staff is charged with redoing the comp plan, fixing the planning code, developing a parks master plan, and responding to House Bill 2001, among just many other things that they have in front of them. And concurrently, they're handling a really high volume of applications, so their workload is also very hard. 3 new board members will increase that workload. There's an orientation period there's an orientation that has to happen. And when 2 of those members are new to city service and do not appear to possess comprehensive experience, the workload is increased even more for the staff. I am sure that Mr. Cousins and Mr. Ellison have a lot of enthusiasm. I think it's great that they want to be on boards. Again, they bring, I'm sure, a fresh perspective, and they will be very valuable. But I think this is the wrong spot at this moment. In addition to her extensive corporate experience, which she describes in her application in finance, systems, and project management, Ms. Jarosh has also served on 2 city boards. As a board member, she has managed multiple projects, served as chair, and successfully pursued grant funding. Active membership on city boards means she's familiar with city speak. She's familiar with many of the city processes and like budgeting and contracting, and she knows how to deal with the related obstacles. As a reminder, historic preservation is a chapter in the planning code. It is a planning function, and the Heritage and Landmark Commission follows the same public rules, public hearing process procedures that the Planning Commission does. As chair of the HLC, she is familiar with some elements of the planning code. She's also conducted a public hearing, such as which was the one that was done for the Hanlon application for the modifications to the Holly Street City Hall. She oversaw the just completed survey of the close-in northeast and northwest neighborhoods, 2 areas are our community that are likely to be considered for multi-unit housing developments in the near future. And I did include, certainly not the entire report because that was 51 pages, but I thought I'd just give everyone just sort of a view. And so you should have something like this, 4 pages from that report. This is the first page that gives you just sort of a feel. It's the executive summary, and it's also the table of contents that tells you the kind of work that was done by the consulting firm and the kind of things that she is familiar with, having managed that process. She's also attended, as I did when I was chair of the Heritage Landmark Commission, the 2020 and 2021. I didn't go to those, but I went to the ones when I was there. Certified local government workshop that was held by the State Heritage Organization, and those are held typically in conjunction with other state departments, and the topics are typically things that touch on planning issues, in particular those that relate to historic preservation. The attendees are generally 90% of the time they're from planning departments in other communities, but sometimes commission members do attend. And she has carried on the tradition of having at least someone from the Heritage Landmark Commission and Canby attend those. She's also overseen the implementation, or she is overseeing the implementation of the 2020 Camby Historic Preservation Plan, which addresses one of the Goal 5 requirements of a comprehensive plan, which of course is right on the agenda of the Heritage or of the Planning Commission. On multiple occasions, I've heard comments from this group about the need for the Planning Commission to take a more active role in some of the project work, in particular the code revisions. As evidenced by the multiple board projects she has led or participated over in the last 3 years, Ms. DeRoche, I think, has clearly demonstrated that board work is not just about attending meetings and reading the material. It's also about using her skills and experiences to get things done. So I encourage you to consider her. And just to sort of emphasize the last point I just made, I also included for you sort of the 1-page 2021 year in review from the Heritage and Landmark Commission, which is also in your packet, just to sort of demonstrate how much under her leadership this particular group has accomplished in spite of the COVID situation and, you know, confined to Zoom conferences. So I encourage you to approve her appointment to the Planning Commission, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carol, very much for being here this evening and laying that out for us for Mr. Roche. I really do appreciate that. And I think that I speak for all of us when we say appreciate you and your work and the things that you've done and then being here this evening. So thank you very much. Great. Thank you, Carol. Discussion pieces regarding the appointments, I think. Councilor Bangs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to amend the motion to remove the Planning Commission appointments from the consent agenda.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the table already from Council President Hensley about approving the consent agenda. Councilor Hensley, are you willing to change your motion to remove those from the current motion and treat them separately?
I am not interested in amending my motion, no.
Okay. So that motion stands.
Mr. Mayor, it is possible to amend a motion without the approval of the person who made the motion.
Mr. Mayor, maybe I could shed some light on this.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, so we have a lot of different materials that speak about our parliamentary procedure in Canby, and in general, we follow Robert's rules. But in particular, I'm looking at our policies and operating guidelines for members of the City Council. It was last updated December 2018. On page 4, second paragraph to the bottom, it talks about the ability to have an amendment to a motion. And so it specifically calls out, whereas some of our charts and different views of Roberts doesn't necessarily explicitly say as much as this paragraph does, but this one's actually found in your policies and operating guidelines, page 4. And it says a motion to amend may be made to a previous motion that has been seconded but not voted on, and this is where you're at. And it says amendments will be voted on first, then the main motion as amended or not amended. So if there is a motion to amend and it's seconded, you actually have to vote on the amendment first, according to your policies.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. So I guess we have a motion to amend the consent agenda.
And I'll second, Brian.
Okay, seconded by Counselor Parker. All those in favor of
Discussion.
Sure, discussion.
I would actually be curious to know what the alternative is intended. Why are we voting to remove the appointments? What would be the end goal?
Counselor Banks.
To avoid voting down the consent agenda?
And what we're going to do with the appointments?
Discuss those separately from the minutes of the previous council meeting.
So we're splitting the consent agenda into two motions. Is that what I'm hearing, Mr. Mayor?
My understanding is that the motion to amend it, your motion is to pull out the approval of the candidates for the planning commission out of the consent agenda approval, and then therefore just approving the minutes of the November 3rd joint work session, and then approving that, and then having a separate discussion on the planning commission appointments.
Okay, no other questions. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or discussion items on? Okay, so all those in favor of the amended motion by Councilor Bangs to separate the consent agenda between or removing the planning commission portion, the planning commission appointee process out of the consent agenda. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? An abstention? So that we'll separate those out, 3-2-1 on that matter. So
Still a motion on the floor, though. What do we do with that, Joe?
I'm sorry, Councilor Hensley, what was that?
There's still my motion on the floor. What do we do
Right.
with that?
So your motion now
Correct.
would be to accept the consent agenda, which just include the minutes of the November 3rd work session.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yes.
Joe?
Yes, so your original motion now is amended by removing the other portions, but your motion stays as to the consent agenda, but now it doesn't have the appointees in it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sorry for the confusion.
Nope. How things are done. So the motion on the table then is to approve the consent agenda, which now just includes the minutes of the November 3rd, 2021 joint work session with the Planning Commission and the regular City Council meeting of the same date. Any discussion or comment? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? So that passes 6-0. The half consent agenda. So now we'll address the the removed part, which were the appointments to the Planning Commission. Councilor Bangs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to appoint Judy Jaroche and Chris Calkins to the Planning Commission with the terms expiring December 31st, 2024, and Dan Ewert to the Planning Commission with the terms expiring December 31st, 2022.
So motion's been made by Councilor Bangs and seconded by Councilor Parker to approve. Chris, I'm sorry. Counselor Banks, can you, what
Yeah,
were the,
it was for Judy Jarosh and Chris Calkins for the terms expiring December 31st, 2024. Dan Ewert for the term expiring December 31st, 2022.
okay. That was seconded by Counselor Parker. Discussion, Counselor Varwig.
Yeah, Joe, you're going to have to come to the table. We're going to have some discussion about this, unfortunately. I had sent you an email earlier, Joe. Hopefully you were able to see that. I'm curious if you can give us a little more explanation on our city charter, which specifically says that members of the Planning Commission, and it uses the word shall, be appointed by the city council upon a recommendation of the mayor, the city council liaison to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission chairperson. At this point, any appointments to the Planning Commission that is not recommended by the mayor or the liaison would be a violation of our city charter, would it not?
Well, here's where my interpretation of that lies is, and excuse me for any lawyer speak here, but the idea is it does say shall be appointed by the city council. And then it says upon the recommendation of the mayor, the council liaison to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission chairperson. But what it doesn't say shall be appointed by the city council, any recommendation of them. It doesn't say the city council shall appoint the recommendation. It says upon the recommendation, and upon is more like once they've done that first thing, then the appointment process takes place. So the first step is always the recommendation part of the process. And then the second part is the appointment process. Well, you would have a powerless sham appointment power if it was nullified by a forced recommendation. And so our charter also talks about all powers residing within the council. And so I think the wording, because it doesn't intentionally say you must take the recommendation and appoint them, it actually says shall be appointed. And I agree that the language isn't perfect, but that it shall be appointed by the city council upon the recommendation. It basically says you're going to have to go through that recommendation process first. So I would say anybody who's been through the recommendation process can then be appointed by the council. If they haven't been through the recommendation process, you can't just take a guy named Gary that you meet in the parking lot tonight and make him a part of your planning commission. But if they've gone through the process, that the power of appointment still lies, and it is still a power of the council. And if it was just a rubber stamp, it wouldn't actually be a power of appointment. So it would just say the process would be it has to go through the interview process and it's done. If that helps.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. So, a lot of the discussion that's been had has been talking about experience. And so now we have an appointment of a person that has zero board experience and zero planning experience as well. So unfortunately, I mean, I see the way this is going, and unfortunately, it looks like this is just a political game at the expense of the citizens of Canby. So I'm frustrated at how this is going, but I see where it's going.
And I guess to also kind of further elucidate this, there is a provision right after the talking about the appointment and removal process that also talks about not more than 2 members shall be engaged in the same business or trade. There's parts that say no more than 2 members shall be, principally engaged in real estate. So to further kind of elucidate this idea that the power still remains within council is what if this process brought to you 3 people of the same stripe? the council would then have to follow their own code and shoot down the recommendation. So I'm hopeful that, the fact that the code seems to be a little bit more internally consistent with that reading, that you guys will accept that.
I do think it's important also to mention that Chris Calkins is the husband of one of our city councilors. And I do think, personally, I think that might create some conflict of interest. I know it's not against the rules, but I think it's important to have that out there for the citizens to know.
Councilor Varga, anything else? Okay, Councilor Bangs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason for my motion here has nothing to do with my judgment of Ellison or Cousins. There was a concern with the process. Two of the applicants applied after the deadline, and it is relevant that one of them works for the other one. But I've only heard good things about Cousins. I don't know Ellison at all, and I would certainly encourage them to participate further in our city government. That is not the reason I'm doing this.
Actually, with the ones that were in the first, there was only 2 positions open. The third position came open after the original deadline, just FYI.
And
Mayor.
And historically, with the hard and fast deadlines on postings that we have had, generally the only one that's been a hard and fast posting piece has been the city council one. Generally speaking, a lot of when we do appointments for our boards and committees and commissions, the deadline is to encourage people to apply and get them in. It has not been uncommon where we have had people apply, between the deadline and when interviews were going to be set up, and then have interviews occur. So that's why we included the 2 gentlemen, Matt Ellison and Nick Cousin, into the process, because we had not set up interviews yet when their applications came in. So that's why we included them in the process of that. I think I think in your email to the council or and questioning this too was, them working together or one working for the other. So I'm not sure can you explain the concern there?
It would be hard for somebody to vote on a board against his boss's vote.
I think that's presumptive, is it not?
I guess that would be up to your own judgment.
Councilor President Hensley had her hand up first, so I'll go to her and I'll come back to you. Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First point of topic is experience, that we've heard that mentioned. While Judy has board experience, and we thank her for all of her service to the city, right in her application, she says she has no planning experience. Chris, to my knowledge, has no experience in planning. I mean, he does mortgages. That's what I know about it. And no board experience whatsoever. Matt and Nick, I've known Matt for some time. I don't know Nick, but I know that their industry, they deal with codes every day. So they, in my book, have more book knowledge, more working knowledge of planning and code interpretation than any of the other applicants. I find it embarrassing at best that we're going to judge somebody's integrity without even meeting them. I can't imagine Matt ever holding a vote over Nick's head. I don't know Nick, but I know Matt. I think that's just an embarrassing thing to say. With that, I would like to amend the motion. And being that all of our documents say that the interviews should be held with the mayor, the council liaison, and a chair of the planning commission, which didn't happen because the chair was one of the positions resigned, I would move that we remand the interview process back to the planning commission after they've voted on a chair. Because none of us, except for Councilor Varwig and the mayor, were in those interviews. So only they know the best candidates. And I'm going to back up the choices that they've given us because they were there to talk to these folks. We were not. So I don't think that making determinations based on assumptions and hearsay possibly, I don't know. I don't think that's appropriate. So I move that we do the interviews once they appoint a chair.
I will second.
Okay, so amended or asking, so a motion to amend it back to the, I guess, to the interview group to include the planning commission chair once that is voted upon, and re-interview the 5 candidates for the 3 vacant seats. Is that what I'm hearing from a motion, Council President Hensley? And Councilor Varwig, are you seconding that? Okay, so there's a first and second on that. Discussion. No discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to amend? All those in favor? Those opposed? An abstention? So that motion fails. 2 for, 3 against, and 1 abstention. Okay, so that brings us back to the original conversation. Councilor Varwig.
Wait a minute. I was up before him.
Sorry, Councilor Parker. You're correct. Sorry, your hand, I didn't have the hand up. I'm sorry.
And I
Councilor Parker. Councilor Parker.
Well, Councilor Varwig, being newer to the council, perhaps is unaware that twice in the past decade, spouses have been appointed. The spouse of Councilor Todd Rocha was appointed. Chris was appointed to the Planning Commission. And the husband of Tracy Hensley, Sean Hensley, was appointed. I don't remember anyone at the time, Sean, raising the issue about a conflict of interest. In fact, at the time, Councilor Hensley actually seconded the motion and voted on it. Councilor Rocha abstained from the vote. So I think we can put that aside. Now, as to the point of qualifications, Mr. Calkins is a member of the Canby Chamber of Commerce, is a member of the Canby Kiwanis Club. There is a record there of citizen engagement and involvement, and also for nearly 2 decades was an efficiency expert for a national corporation working on making things faster, better, smarter. In fact, he was a trainer for ADP. So I think part of what the council has been asking the Planning Commission to do is to stop canceling meetings and get to work on making the code make more sense. So I think that while he doesn't have the planning experience and the committee experience that Judy does, I think he is by far more qualified than the other 2 nominees, who in their own application pointed out that their interest and qualifications actually fell outside of the realm of what the Planning Commission does, that they're interested in the community, they want to make the community better, and that sort of thing. So I think we should proceed with Councilor Bang's motion.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Councilor Varwig, then Council President Hensley.
Well, I mean, again, clearly we know where this is going, but I think that to assume that a employee and employer, while that's, again, not spoken or not put in our code that that's not allowed, not a process thing, that, you know, that's just a pure assumption that an employer is going to hold a vote over an employee's head. I think that same assumption could be had. That's why I said I think it's conflict of interest. And Councilor Parker, had I been on the city council when those other two were voted in, I would have said the exact same thing.
Thank you, Councilor. Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I basically was going to reiterate, I was going to say basically what Councilor Varwig said. Just that I still find it terrible that we're going to make an assumption on somebody's integrity when we haven't even interviewed with these people and met them, just based on their employment. I mean, honestly, what gain would Mr. Ellison have over a vote on the Planning Commission to make Mr. Cousin in that position? It seems preposterous to me. And as for Councilor Parker's point, I honestly don't remember if there was any other applications at the time, because this was a decade ago. And at that time, I do recall that volunteerism was at an all-time low, and if they could fog a mirror, we took them. My ex-husband, yes, did serve on the Planning Commission. That's no secret. But I don't see this thing with Mr. Ellison and Mr. Cousin an issue. I think this whole thing is kind of already been predetermined, and well, the chips will fall where they may. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So there's Councilor Bangs and Councilor Varwig.
I think Councilor Varwig had, no, I guess it is my turn. I just wanted to point out in just in response to Councilor Hensley's most recent comment, I've not had any conversations with Councilor Bajorn over this, and exceedingly little with Councilor Spoon over this. I don't believe that this was a predetermined outcome. I just want to make clear that we did not violate any Oregon public meeting quorum laws.
Councilor Varwig.
I just wanted to point out that this clearly, very clearly, at least to me, it looks like a predetermined thing. And so I'll just make my comment again. It just looks like a political game at the expense of Camby citizens, and I'm really disappointed.
Last comment, Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will second what Councilor Varwig has said, and also just to comment to Councilor Bang's point, I never said that I thought you broke a quorum law. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to appoint Judy DeRoche to the Planning Commission for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2024. The appointment of Chris Calkins to the Planning Commission for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2024. And the appointment of Dan Ewert to the Planning Commission for a term to expire on December 31st, 2022. All those in favor of that motion? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? So that motion carries 3-2-1. Okay. Next on the agenda is a discussion, new business discussion regarding replacement of bathrooms at Community Park. Councilor Bangs, this was something that you had brought up and asked about, and so I will put it in your hands to discuss kind of what it is that you're desire or thoughts are on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible, Melissa, if I could get sharing privileges? Because I'd like to show some pictures too. My concern with the bathrooms, I'll just tell you right now, I'd like to have the city replace them. Our bathrooms turn 50 next year. They are older than our public works director and also older than half of our council. I believe they're still sporting their original stainless steel seatless toilets. Next year, the bathroom facility there will be eligible for AARP. Our population when they were built was 4,000 people. We're 22, that's about 22% of what it is today. And we still have the same 2 single person toilets in this park, one for boys, one for girls. Meanwhile, last summer when it was hot, Chief Davis reported that there were, quote, well over 1,000 people down at that park, or roughly 500 people per toilet. That was in August, not June, when it was super hot. I went through the park on that 170-degree day. And I support the chief's contention that the park is simply packed. It's otherwise a beautiful park with big shady trees and a lovely river. So it makes sense that the park is so popular with a large portion of our community. As a dad, I can attest that the bathrooms were a dreadful fear when my wife and I used to take our little kids down to the park, which was often because we could walk there from our old house. We used to hope and pray that the kids wouldn't use the potty because the toilet seats were gross, and or the lack of toilet seats. The water blasts all over, and there's no soap. And it turns out a lot of people have that same fear and simply don't use the bathrooms, even if they intend to stick around all day. As a family, we used to walk up the river along that trail, which is now fenced off, and there you could find a number of things like evidence of trespassing and river bank erosion and probably underage drinking and smoking, all of which should concern the city. But the worst was the frequency of toilet paper left somewhat between like 5 and 20 feet of the Molalla River, meaning people were opting for the bushes to do their business rather than those crummy restrooms. So that's right on the river and right upstream from our city drinking water intake. And this is a public health hazard and it needs immediate remedy. I would like council to direct staff to bring us a proposal to rebuild the restrooms to modern standards, to expand the number of toilets and sinks, et cetera, to a number more in line with the number of people who typically use the park. This is probably going to need to include sewer and water line installation or septic development. I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. And I would also defer to Scott to determine the best sources of funding for the project. I suspect that parks maintenance and the COVID relief funds would both be appropriate. I'm going to try and share my pictures now.
Councilor Bangs.
Yes, sir.
I've been informed that there's an issue with the screen sharing, but if you can email your pictures to Melissa, if that's possible, we'll pull them up from here, from City Hall. I'm sorry, there's some issue with the sharing. I'm not sure.
If I can do a sketch. I will see if I can email that, and the pictures are probably not essential. I'm not asking for a council vote, just direction of the to the city staff at this point to direct staff to come up with a proposal to fix those bathrooms. We can look at the pictures later. I will tell you, it was nerve-wracking for me taking the pictures as a middle-aged man with a camera in a public restroom facility. I was terrified that I would get caught. But no one else was there.
So, Councilor Banks, could you reiterate again kind of what it is that you're...
I would like the council to direct staff to come up with a proposal to fix those bathrooms.
Fix and repair or replace?
Replace. I understand that the Parks and Rec Committee wanted to wait until after the master plan comes out. But the master plan is not going to address replacing these bathrooms, and it's a crisis, I think.
Okay, so replace. So basically, what it would take from a design standpoint to replace it, potential costs, I would add, do we have a facilities replacement plan? I'd like to know that as well. I think there's oftentimes, we just added the new bathrooms out there at Pine, what's that new development called?
For the Timber Park.
Thank you. Timber Park there. I wanted to say like Pine Park, but that's not it. But Timber Park, and whatnot. So everything's got a life to it. And what is that life and where is this at? 50 years is a long time for stainless steel and whatnot, Yeah, and do we look at those kinds of things with a capacity standpoint? Is it a fix and repair and add another one somewhere else in the park? Or is it I'd be curious to know that as well, versus, one central location. Because I think sometimes what it may end up being is a matter of convenience to use somewhere else in the park versus walking down to the one restroom there in the park. Just my 2 cents on that. Councilor Parker, comments, questions?
Well, first of all, let me second what you just said about us having a maintenance plan. I've always been concerned about the fact that we're eager to build new facilities, but we do not have a replacement plan that takes a look at our inventory, how old they are, and what their lifespan is. What I wanted to say, Brian, was that Community Park is on my bicycle path of heading down there. And anytime I drive by, especially in the summer, I head down there and talk to people and see how they're doing. And that is the number one thing that people tell me. Secondly, with climate change, that park is just being used so much. I hope when the Parks Committee takes a look at the master plan and assuming that it is mentioned there, that we take a look at other things besides this health and safety issue. And finally, I would like us to also look at the possibility of putting in real plumbing. I think we all kind of know that the intake for Camby Utility is downstream from that septic field that's there. And at some point in the future, septic systems are just going to be a thing of the past. They just aren't going to exist. So I would like to encourage staff to give us 2 sets of numbers, one for a septic system and one for really doing it correctly. Finally, I'll be a broken record again and point out that inflation's running at 6.72% now. And so to the extent that the city administrator can identify funds and put this out to bid in this fiscal year, I think we're making better use of taxpayer money. To delay on any public works project is only to increase its cost. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to agree. Well, first of all, Councilor Banks has a very good point. The bathrooms do need addressed as soon as we possibly can. And Councilor Parker is also correct in that maybe plumbing is a better idea than the septic. But I want to be cognizant of the workload that Parks and Public Works already have. And so I would like to see from Scott, not just proposals on funding mechanisms, but honestly, true and realistic timelines based on the workload that they already have. And once again, encourage all of my colleagues to jump in the truck with Jerry and take the truck tour around town. He'll show you what's going on, where the projects are and what's coming down the pike, and get the real deal. Because I think that will cause you to take pause before proposing lots of grandiose ideas. So I really encourage you to do that. And Scott, I already know, is amicable to that idea. So I encourage you to take Jerry up on that. But really, Scott, I would like to see not just funding mechanisms and proposals for RFPs, but a realistic timeline based on the workload already established. Thank you.
Yeah, I again, like we had our work session and we listed out a number of items that were either already in queue and being worked on and addressed, plus a couple of other items that we threw in there. So, you know, what gets shifted down or moved around in terms of time and availability. You know, a Gantt chart of all of those and how they overlap would be, I think, pretty eye-opening for us to look at in terms of the project list that's out there and where they're at or what's coming up. So just, again, I second that piece on Council President Hensley. And yeah, the direct plumbing versus septic would be, I think, initially a big investment, but long-term beneficial. So I would concur with a price comparison there. Councilor Parker, you still have your hand up. Did you have another comment? No. Okay. Councilor Spoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. One, agree a facilities replacement plan over time would be great. Even, you know, homeowners associations have those for what types of long-term maintenance and replacement plan will be needed. And I'm maybe perhaps one exists and we just haven't seen one, but I would love to see one. If it exists or if it doesn't exist, we can make that part of our objective for the coming years to go through and really look at all those facilities. In terms of whether or not it's an issue of convenience or an issue of quality of bathroom, I have seen the similar things that Mr. Banks has seen. My family often floats from Goodsbridge to Knightsbridge, so I get quite a view of the entire waterway coming through town. And I will tell you that you don't see toilet paper spread out at other parks the way you do at Community Park. And if it was an issue of convenience, I think we'd see it in other parks, right? Because the bathrooms aren't centrally located in most of our parks, but it doesn't happen in the other parks because in my opinion, and what seems to be true, is it's an issue of the complete facility being substandard, subpar. And I agree with Councilor Banks, a borderline public health crisis because of both the quality of the facility, but then the fact that people choose not to use the facility instead. I think that Councilor Banks is asking for something reasonable, which is, can we get an estimate and a proposal? We're not saying right now it's something we're going to do, but certainly I would like to see what it would look like if we did it. That park is going to be heavily used again this summer, and I think the sooner we can get started on replacing the bathrooms, the better off we'll be, instead of having another full summer with the current state of affairs. So I'm all for just asking staff what that would look like. And I agree with Councilor Parker too. I'd love to see it with the current septic system, just replacing the bathroom, and then with full sewer. Though I have to say I would err on the side of if we're going to do it, we should just go ahead and put the sewer in. The intake for water is downstream from there. And that seems like it could be problematic with improper or with poor weather, flooding, that type of stuff. We may as well, if we're going to do it correctly so that they can last another 50 years.
Thank you. Councilor Bjorn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, I agree with a lot of what has been said already. And I think what Councilor Banks is asking for is actually extremely thoughtful. If we're going to start, doing things that, the city needs, this is probably a good idea. If these bathrooms are 50 years old, they're overdue for improvement and replacement, most likely. The idea of having a cost estimate versus, septic, versus normal plumbing. Yeah, I agree that is, versatile to have that recommendation so that we can utilize taxpayer money the best way possible. And I can speak to the fact that, my family and I don't go to that park specifically because it's underdeveloped. And especially those bathrooms. I think we've gone there twice in the 3 years we've lived in town. It's time to start focusing on the things that the community can benefit from. I think it should be high on the list.
Thank you. Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious. This is a new business item, not an agenda item. So just to make sure we understand each other, we're not looking for, this isn't a voting piece. We're just looking for consensus on directing Scott, correct?
Yes, consensus to direct Scott, and potentially items of interest that we want included in potential proposal or what like.
Okay, so I was just making sure we didn't need to make a motion. We're just nodding in consensus, which I think we've pretty much almost done. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yep. So just to make sure we're giving the right direction to our city manager and his team, we're looking at a replacement, not a fix of the bathrooms at Community Park. We're looking for something that in terms of a proposal, in terms of what would it take from a cost perspective, a replacement, and then is there a replacement plan for something like this currently in place? And if there is, where does this fall on that replacement plan? And then looking at what it would cost to either continue to do septic or go with direct plumbing. Am I missing any directional items in that regards that we talked about? Councillor Varwig and Councillor Bangs.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that, as you were going through those, I don't know that it would hurt to have also the cost of what it would to be to repair those and get those back into clean and working order. Replacement may not be necessary. I'm sure it probably is necessary, and that will come in the homework that they do. But I think just to have all the cards on the table, maybe having the numbers of what it would look like, or if it's even possible to just repair those versus replace them, would be a good idea.
Okay. Councillor Bangs.
Thank you. I wanted to reiterate that Scott and Jerry are experts in this. They'll know how to figure this out. Sure. I just want them to tell us what we ought to do. And also, because there's some question about whether we should go with the existing facility, I think it would be important if we could get those pictures I took, just so everyone can see what those toilets look like. There's no toilet seat, and so this thing needs to get bulldozed. Although not until after the replacement is in place, obviously. But other than that, I think Jerry and Scott know what to do. I think that's their area of particular expertise.
No, I don't disagree with that. I just want to make sure that I'm sure that there will be elements that they know of that we haven't asked about or tried to articulate. So, and that's what I'm banking on. But I want to make sure that at least the elements that we have brought up, they that they make sure that they address what we are asking as well. Chris, it looks like your pictures are up.
Nice. Thank you, Melissa. It doesn't require a whole lot of dialogue, but let's go ahead and roll through. Or is that a spinning blue circle of non-compliance? Is that what that is?
Yeah, it looks like it's freezing up. Maybe it's coming back to life here. Hang tight for just a second. I think we're getting it.
In the city's defense, I use an old PowerPoint program probably because I never upgrade. That's probably the problem.
It looks fine on this.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it wants it. Every time I say that, it starts to come to life and then it stops.
Actually, I've run into this into the classroom where teachers have different versions at their home computer versus the school, and this is what happens when you end up with incompatible versions. So,
well, perhaps Councillor Bangs, if it's all right, we'll coordinate with you maybe just to get the the picture files themselves. And then when we're able to pull this information together that's being requested, we'll come back to you, and during that presentation or discussion, we'll pull those pictures back up.
Yeah, I can just email or text the pictures. They're on my phone, and it would take me, with my skill, a long time just to find them. So I'll send them to Melissa.
Okay, and we'll pull those up when we come back to you with some information.
Scott, any questions on your end in terms of the direction or the desire here about the replacement of the bathrooms at Community Park?
No, Mayor, it's clear. And I don't think it'll be pulling that information together for you just to answer these questions. I don't think will be terribly difficult. What I'll need to do is then kind of assess the timelines from there as to what we might be looking at and how it might or might not impact our workload that we've got in front of us. So I don't think gathering the information is very burdensome. So we should be able to do that, but we'll see what that looks like from there.
Okay. It's nod of heads that we're comfortable with our city manager's assessment and steps to move forward. All right. I see bobbleheads ensuing. So perfect. We'll go from there. Okay. Thank you all for that. Future agenda item follow-up, the council retreat. So as we discussed at our work session, the desire to try to connect and do a work session, and I'll say more council work session, goal setting than retreat, since we're not really going anywhere. The facilitator that we have contracted, she has dates available coming up very quickly. The first one is February 11th, which is a Friday, Saturday, March 26th, and Saturday, April 9th. I have asked that Scott and Melissa maybe put together a doodle poll to send out to us here by the end of the week for all of us to punch in which days may or may not work for you. And we will do our very best to pick the date that hopefully all of us can attend, or most of us can attend. Again, we ran into some issue where we all wanted to be there, and I think that everyone should want to be there, and we should make it everyone that can. We look at the dates when they come back from everyone's doodle poll. So I just want to give everyone, that's really kind of it. I know that one counselor has already submitted the dates that they're available. So like I said, that doodle poll will go out. It'll be a quick turnaround. The facilitator is currently holding these dates, but she very much wants to book whatever date we don't choose. So I will put that in everyone's bonnet on that one. Council President Hensley, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious if we know when the Parks Master Plan would be done. It sounds like February 11th might be too soon. I would prefer to have that master plan done, since a lot of our discussion seems to be revolving around parks. So I'd like to have that piece of data already in our possession. So I'm thinking the March and April dates might be better, unless Scott has information about that master plan that makes February 11th actually make sense.
So that conversation Scott and I had actually today about the park master plan, in that it is, there is one more community input piece coming up. And then there will be not a final draft, but a pseudo final piece that will come before what I have talked with Scott about was doing, and I need to talk to our park advisory board chair about this, but doing a joint meeting with the park advisory board and the city council to go through the almost final draft and see that and go through that collectively, and then let the company go back and do whatever tweaks and things that they need for a final draft. So late February, I think, is what we're looking at from a park master plan piece. I don't know if we necessarily need the park master plan to discuss goals and objectives, but that's just my 2 cents. Councilor Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out, and you probably are.
You just muted yourself.
Not sure how much I said. March 26th is the end of spring vacation. And yeah, I don't know how big a deal that is for everyone, but I do know that well, Brian, Scott, Sean, David, Sarah, and I all have children in school. So it's possible that date's not going to be a very good one.
Thank you for that, Councilor Bangs. Appreciate that heads up. You said the word spring break, and it triggered something that my wife said to me about, hey, here's what we're thinking for spring break. So I appreciate that. Councilor Spoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 questions. Scott, I'm curious about what this, I love community input, so I'm not against it. I'm just curious what this final piece of community input is, because I thought we were looking at getting the master plan back this month. So I'm surprised to hear there's another step that's still to be done. And then my other question is that initially you told us that we might get some preliminary findings before the master plan is complete. And I was hoping that we might get some of those this month if we're not getting the final master plan. What does that look like?
So the first question, I just got some information today from our staff that there is, I'm pulling up an email that I got just to look at this real quick, make sure I'm saying this correctly. Due to a number of issues, we were not able to hold our final engagement activities for the Parks Master Plan in early December. So there were some issues that arose, I suppose conflicts with schedules or something to that effect. The consultant is looking to get these final pieces wrapped up. So this actually refers to your second question, Councilor Spoon. So this, we would, once we get these confirmed, we will of course notify you immediately. Again, I just got this information this afternoon. There's a date of Tuesday, January 18th being proposed, an evening findings presentation. It's one of the public meetings that was planned that was supposed to happen earlier, but was pushed out. And I think that's kind of a little bit what you're getting at with some preliminary findings, but that was in a public session, and then that would be folded into any further public input would then be, of course, folded into the plan. So I guess kind of finally answering your second part of your question then is what the mayor was talking about, and council can give direction here if you would like, but the idea would be that there would be this findings. I would recommend that perhaps we would encourage people to attend this meeting and get some sense of where the findings are starting to lead. We can do it in different manners. It's up to us to direct that, but the Parks Board, of course, is also involved here, and we'd want, I think, to ask their input. But I think the idea is to present something that is not a final draft of by any measure to the council. I think what the mayor was suggesting was, and I've heard this suggested by other councilors as well, is that we would have a joint work session with the Parks Board and the council at the same time to receive that sort of first formal presentation to both the council and the Park Board. So it's kind of the same thing, I think, what you're asking, Councilor Spoon. It's just maybe the semantics or the way it's being described, but it's kind of the same idea. It's sort of a first cut at here's what our plan is starting to shape up. Still plenty of time for input. So, what are your thoughts on that? That's kind of the idea. So that would be the idea that Mayor Hodson, I think, was just suggesting, which is we would coordinate a joint work session, if you will, with council and Parks Board to hear that preliminary report. If and it's not in final form, it would be in a form that could be receive input, could be modified, and so that's. Is that,
yeah, it does. But excuse my confusion. So is that similar to what would happen on or around January 18th that you were talking about? Or are those two separate meetings? Is one for the general public and one would be, but they would cover more or less similar materials?
Yes, the final public piece where the preliminary findings are presented would be, that would be part of the public input process that would be then taken into account before they give the council and the Parks Board. It's sort of, here's what we heard, and we reiterated it with the public at this final hearing with the, or not hearing, but final public meeting where we sort of present, here's what it shaped up. They met with the public at some different forums, and it would be kind of a final presentation in the public forum where it's like, how does this jive with what we've talked to you about before? So that's different than the presentation to the council.
Okay. And so that final kind of public input, this is what it looks like. Can we get a final piece of public feedback before we move on to the end? Is that going to be open to everyone, or is it going to be open to everyone? And is it going to be virtual attendance possible, or is it going to be in person?
I think that's going to be a virtual meeting.
Okay.
I was just hearing today that it looks like they're setting it up as a virtual meeting. So yes, it's open to everybody. We will push that out. I have to actually confirm that date, those dates with staff tomorrow. I was just asked this later in the afternoon today, and I haven't had a chance to converse with our staff, but I'll be doing that first thing tomorrow. So it's pretty likely that date is solid. I just have to confirm it. So I'll use this forum tonight as a kind of a preliminary first announcement that it looks like we're going to have a public meeting for the master plan, which will be the last of the public input meetings before it goes to council and park board on the evening of January 8th. So we will publish that information formally. We'll blast it out on our social media and our website. And of course, we'll inform council and parks board and everybody that that's occurring.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
Councilor Bajorn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as far as the council retreat, which was, of course, the original topic, Brian, trying to bring it back to the center here.
Thank you.
First off, I think agree we have to do it, I think, sooner rather than later. Now, unless I'm misunderstanding it, the purpose of the retreat is to discuss goal setting, not necessarily agree on specific action, but to just come up with ideas, kind of figure out where we all stand on things and what we're trying to all accomplish together. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I would think that maybe we don't necessarily need any version of the Parks Master Plan to do that. So I would say, let's do it sooner rather than later, so we have clearer goals in mind on a much better time frame to get stuff done for this year. With that said, on a personal note, March 26th is my birthday. As much as I like all of you, I don't necessarily like you all that much that I want to spend my birthday doing council business. So that's about all I've got.
Sometimes, Councilor Bajorn, there are sacrifices that have to be made to be an elected official or, an appointed official, one of the two, So I'm just saying, and we can be a fun group sometimes. So, we'll bring you a cake.
Oh, it's always fun.
Council President Hensley.
Well, first, before my question, I had to be at a council meeting on my birthday and I didn't get a cake. Where's my cake, Brian?
I will bring you a cake.
When is the doodle poll coming out? Because that's the crux of this. We're going to get a doodle poll to pick the dates. When is that supposed to come out?
Today is Wednesday. The doodle poll will be out by the end of the week. And I will expect that you all will turn it around, hopefully by Tuesday of next week.
Will do. Thank you.
Or sooner. Please, if sooner, end of day Monday. Let's say end of day Monday. That gives you time to coordinate with significant others, families. As we know, spring break is on, and a birthday is on the 26th. So that may be losing out right here as we speak. But that leaves Friday the 11th and Saturday the 9th. So I will leave it at that. So doodle poll later this week. All y'all, let's get responded into Melissa or Maya here by the end of business day, which for most people is 5 o'clock. My end of business day is usually midnight. That's just how I roll. So by 5 o'clock on Monday. Does that seem fair? Wow. Like group thumbs up. I love it. Okay. Can't agree on some things. All right. I'm going to move into mayor's business then. I don't have much coming off the holiday stretch there. Park Advisory Board meeting will be later this month. The Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation is also later this month. The Clackamas County Coordinating Committee is meeting tomorrow evening. And then Tolling Committee, I have a slew of those dates coming up. But again, also the first one this year is later this month. I do have a question regarding the tolling piece for all of you all. Scott and I are working on trying to get somebody from ODOT to come and do a tolling presentation to us to discuss the tolling piece. So far, it seems, and maybe it's more, I'm not going to assume, but potentially a letter coming from the council collectively as a group to either the Board of County Commissioners to push and press harder on the mitigation aspect of the tolling that the tolling is going to cause on Highway 99 through Camby and the surrounding area, and or extending a letter to ODOT and the Oregon Transportation Commission about the tolling piece and its effects that will undoubtedly be on Camby and the surrounding area between 205 and Camby in the outer reaches of our city. So that is something that I definitely, please start to noodle that and think about that, as this does look like tolling is it is a foregone conclusion, unless something stops it at the federal level, but I don't think that that's in the cards from what I understand. So at this point, it's about how do we make it less sucky on Camby, and where do we need to push back appropriately for, again, the mitigation pieces of the increased traffic of cars going around the tolling zone. So just again, food for thought coming up here, probably pretty quick here in the next couple of meetings. That's all that I have right now. We will move into council comments and liaison reports, and I'll go right around the clock here on my screen. Councillor Bangs, you're first, sir.
I was trying to lower my hand, but I realized it wasn't up. The library board has not met since we've met last time. The school board did meet the right before we had our big work session in December. There was an announced change to ODE guidelines regarding quarantining for students to test positive for COVID. That's well publicized. The school is once again considering, or perhaps still considering, changing school start times. I suspect that'll be actually happening this year after years of discussion. Demolition is going to happen to an outbuilding at the high school at the end of this school year, and that'll get remodeled with 12 new classrooms. This is a bond that we passed in the town or the school district a while ago. That'll be finished in 2023-24. And also Lee Elementary and 91 and Baker Prairie are also going to get upgrades, including new entrances for security purposes. And the only other real school district news is one you guys are already well familiar with. We did set a record for COVID today, exceeding the previous record, which was yesterday. And there's already discussions going on in the school district about whether we're going to be passing more restrictions interestingly, since our meeting started tonight, I've gotten 2 emails from students saying that they have COVID and they're going to be out for X amount of time. I haven't read them emails. I just get the little window that pops up. So we've got an Omicron concern going on, and it wouldn't surprise me if fans are going to be banned from our sporting events. We've already canceled the basketball game yesterday. I don't know the extent of all of the cancellations, but it looks like we're going for this ride again. Hopefully it'll be a quicker ride, and we can all get past this, and hopefully we all get COVID or we all get vaccinated and we can move on with life again. But that's what's going on in the school districts right now.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Spoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick things. One, Scott the Arch is looking fantastic. It's been fun watching it go up and watching them put the flagstone on it. When you do your report, I'd love a little update on that. The only other thing I want to do is give another nod to Canby Area Transit, who during our little snowstorm right after Christmas just kept everyone so incredibly updated. On December 28th alone, they started posting at 3:17 a.m. on social media and on the website to keep people updated with the route so that people knew if they could get on the 99X and if it was going to be going anywhere, and it wasn't. And eventually, they were able to post. So I just really appreciate that high level of communication so that people in our community that depend on CAT have up-to-date information. In fact, between 3:17 a.m. and the start of the business day, they posted 7 times with updates on routes and weather and what to expect and delays. And I just want to give them a big nod because I appreciate that. With the circulator being new, it's just nice to have all of that information as people begin to understand what the route's going to be like, what kind of delays might occur with inclement weather. So with more inclement weather potentially coming our way this winter at some point, please stay connected to Canby Area Transit via social media or their website so that you can stay up to date on what your route is doing.
Thank you. Council President Hensley.
Unmuted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually don't have anything to report as my liaison assignments are later in the month. And that's all I have. So Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you. Councilor Parker.
Yes, my liaison assignments are later in the month as well, but I did want to take a moment to say what tremendous appreciation and respect I've had for outgoing Camby Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Kyle Lang. He really has set a standard for collaboration with the city, with businesses, how he's walked around. He's really done an amazing job. He's now, as he puts it, been offered something that he can't refuse. And he certainly goes with my appreciation for what a terrific partner he has been with the city. So Kyle, thank you.
Nicely stated, sir. Thank you. Councilor Bajoran.
All right, not much to talk about Canby Utility Board, but right before our big executive session, work session, one thing that was touched on was critical incident communications improvements, and that's something they're looking to generate some ideas and thoughts on going forward. So nice to see that fine group of people doing some forward thinking and trying to improve the outlook for customers to know what's going on and when, especially in those hard times. So that's about all I've got for now.
Thank you. Last but not least, Councilor Burwig.
Yes, Happy New Year to everybody. I also have assignments later on this month, so I have nothing to report.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Archer, City Administrator Business and Staff Reports.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a few brief items. These are just updates and information. The first is very happy to report some great news about our Industrial Park to 99E extension, our future extension road that we're working on, also known as the Walnut Street extension. We continue to make very solid progress on that project. And so thank you to all of you for supporting the right-of-way acquisition process that we went through kind of towards the latter part of the calendar year. And I want to report to you tonight that as of within the last, probably week or so, the right-of-way acquisitions are complete. We have closed on those properties, and they actually have been recorded with the county, which means we now own the right-of-way. That was a very significant accomplishment, and it was a very smooth process, and we reported on that previously, but I just wanted to confirm with you that we've closed on those and it's done. And so now our next step is we initiate the final design process for the road. We will be coming back to talk to you about that at various points, and we'll certainly review the design with you at the appropriate point for your input. But that is very much on track and proceeding. Second is the Arch and Quiet Zone. Councillor Spoon just mentioned about this a few minutes ago. So yes, we're also making excellent progress there. As you know, the arch is installed. It was raised a few weeks ago in the early hours of the morning. The columns are being worked on. The rock work is being completed. It was almost completed on one of the two today as I last went by there and looked. So they'll be completing the other as well. And then we still have the metallic Canby sign that will be placed on the arch that's being fabricated and will be completed and installed, and the lighting that goes along with the arch and the columns. I think we've mentioned this previously, but we're basically still on track for what we think is a timeline of a full completion of both the Quiet Zone and the arch. We're anticipating that to be sometime in March. I can't say more specifically than that, because here's the sort of the kind of kicker piece of that, which is in order to have the Quiet Zone completely finalized and then approved by the railroad, it has to be approved by the railroad for them to actually accept that it's completed, and then they will then begin, the process of not honking the horn. We have to have everything done down to the striping on the roadways. The striping cannot be done until we have the appropriate weather for that, which is, there's some formula where it has to be above 50 degrees for 3 days in a row and there has to be a certain amount of dryness. So what happens is you end up kind of finishing up most of the work, and then you look for that window where you can get that work completed. And so we'll be continuing to work on that, but we do feel reasonably confident that we'll have this all completed sometime in March, and we'll report further on that. You'll continue to see the work on the arch and the columns being completed here over the next few weeks. I want to mention too, regards to the arch. We do plan to have a ceremony of sorts, a public dedication and celebration of that. We'll be looking at something maybe latter part of spring or into the summer, when we can count on some good weather and really have a nice celebration of that accomplishment. So we're excited about that. The last thing to report is our pickleball courts at Maple Street Park. We've reported on those being essentially complete, except for there's a final coating that has to go on those, and that also is dependent on weather. So we've reported previously that we can't complete those until we have some better weather as we move towards the later part of winter or into the spring, and seal the courts finally and have everything done. But the other piece is there is a gazebo that will be adjacent to the pickleball courts that was part of that project. And that still has to be completed. I've been informed just today that the concrete for that gazebo is going to be poured hopefully tomorrow. And then the gazebo itself will be installed next week. So there's another nice accomplishment there. So we'll continue to work forward on that. And again, reiterating that the Parks Master Plan, it looks like that Tuesday, the 18th evening will be a public meeting. We'll provide further details, and people that are interested, everybody is welcome to attend. It will be virtual, it looks like. We will be making some announcements, and if you're interested, we will put that information up hopefully in the next couple of days or 2 or 3 days or so. And that's all I've got to report. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Next on the agenda is second opportunity for citizen input. And I do believe we have Jason Patton that wants to address the council. Good evening, Mr. Patton.
Good evening, everybody. Jason Patton, 1040 North Birch Street in Canby. Tonight, I'm actually coming to you live from the chilly city of Baltimore, Maryland, where it is just after midnight. So I'm glad the meeting didn't go too late. As you know, I'm an active member of the community, and I'm currently a member of the Budget Committee and the Planning Commission. So after watching the meeting tonight, I thought it would be important when it was mentioned about the optics of this recent process of appointing members to the Planning Commission that I should share some of my experience. First, I do have a quick question of the mayor and Councilor Varwig. Was Don Hardy, the planning director, included in the interviews for these members of the Planning Commission?
He was not involved for all 5 of them. No, he was not.
Okay. So as a member of and chair of the City Budget Committee, whenever we have done an appointment to that committee, the director of the finance department, the mayor and chair, and also it's an option for the vice chair to be present during those meetings. Now, that is not necessarily written in the city charter, but that is something that has historically been done. As optic-wise, regarding the political nature that was referenced or insinuated about this, I can tell you that as a citizen and as a member of the Planning Commission, the whole thing looks like a hot mess. The fact that the interviews were done without the planning director and without a representative of the Planning Commission, I find to be extremely abnormal. If it was a problem with trying to fill the vacant position quickly, I can tell you that when I applied for the Planning Commission, my application, there was one Planning Commission chair or one Planning Commission seat open. My application was submitted. It was sat on for 3 months. Finally, after following up many times with the city, an interview was set up. At that interview, Don Hardy and I were on time, and it took 15 to 20 minutes to track down the other members, being Council Liaison Varwig and Chair Savory, to participate in my interview. At that time, the interview was rushed because they wanted to get to the second interview, which I was not aware that there was 2 positions open on the Planning Commission. And after that, the nomination, the 2 individuals were put forward. I was one of them. So I think the whole process needs to be sort of dialed in. As far as the optics of this, also, I find it very fascinating that it was fine for the process to move forward without the planning director or a chair for the nominations that were put forward. But once that was called into question, the process was then an issue. If counselors felt that the process should have been followed, it should have been followed from the beginning, not after the initial nominations were made. I also find it interesting that 2 versions of the agenda were submitted or published with names for people being appointed to the positions. It was a little while after the initial one was sent out that a new one was changed, and the one representative that was initially listed as being part of the consent agenda was changed to somebody else. So that's that. I just want to say that I understand there's a lot of stuff going on there with council. The Planning Commission is very important. We have a very important role in the city. And, I do hope that the consternation of the council does not continue to spread and bleed into other boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Planning Commissioner Patton. I appreciate that. To address a couple of those points, the chair at the time for the interviews, John Savory, had decided not to re-up for his seat on the Planning Commission, and unfortunately was not available for personal reasons to be able to attend the interviews that we had planned. The issue with Don Hardy was he was unavailable. He was out of town on vacation, and we wanted to press. There was the thought of pressing forward because there was just the 4 planning commissioners and trying to move the process forward to get the Planning Commission to a point of having as a full boat with the pending pieces coming up. So that is why we continued with the process as we did it. So I appreciate you coming and bringing that up and asking those questions. Can continue to strive to do some of these things better each time. So appreciate that. Councilor Varwig.
Yeah, just to address the piece of the name change on the agenda, that was a clerical error. Unfortunately, it was. I believe that wasn't how it was supposed to go out originally. So
things happen. It was, we move on. So thank you, Jason, for that piece. Melissa, action review.
You've approved the minutes of November 3rd, 2021, and appointed Judy Jarish and Chris Calkins to the Planning Commission for terms expiring December 31st, 2024, and Dan Ewert for term expiring December 31st, 2022.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate that. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
All those in favor of adjournment? Anybody want to stay and chat? Looks like it's unanimous that we are going to adjourn. Camby, thank you for joining us. And again, I hope that you have a happy and blessed new year. See everybody in 2 weeks. Thank you. Good night.